Hello there and welcome to Ringgit Sense. I'm your host Azaria Tagaya. Now, recently the government announced the iSuri program, which will allow housewives, widows and single mothers to register and enjoy the same benefits as EPF members. In addition to that, the government will deposit 40 ringgit into their EPF account. So for many in the lower income group registering, it's a good start in saving for their retirement. But besides the iSuri program, what else can housewives do to save for their retirement? Should they be entirely dependent on their husbands in planning everything financially? Well, with us in the studio today is licensed financial planner Rajan Devadesan to tell us more about how you can actually maximize your EPF savings. Hi Rajan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi Zara, thank you for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure, really, talking about maximizing your EPF savings, something that I think a lot of people have been actually thinking about at some point in their lives, obviously. So let's start off with what we mentioned earlier, the iSuri program that the government is actually rolling out. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's a useful start. Frankly, I think it's a wonderful initiative. I'm actually very, very impressed at the new government's very proactive approach to help Malaysian housewives take advantage of EPF stability and steady, moderate, very healthy returns simply by registering for the iSuri program and then contributing, I think, a minimum of 5 ringgit per month. Now, the top-up that the government gives, the additional 40 ringgit, is amazing. Now, to most people, it may not seem like a lot of money, but the specific groups that you talked about, those who are in the B40, those who may be widows, housewives who don't really have anything in their own name, I think it's a fantastic initiative. Asians in general, we have to understand, are actually going to eventually face a retirement funding train wreck. Asians in general, Malaysians in particular. And a large part of that is because even though we currently have a relatively young working populace, we're gradually aging. And I think around about 2035, 2040 will be very clearly an aging society. So EPF's role in helping Malaysians save and grow their money for old age, I think is absolutely crucial.
Okay, so what would be your advice to housewives in general? How can they actually save and invest money for their future? And should they actually be dependent on their husbands?
If their marriage is stable, I think that's perfectly all right. Unfortunately, what I've actually seen, even working with my clients, is that the contemplation of divorce and the actual realization of it, it's gradually creeping up. It's nowhere near as bad as the US, where I think more than half of all first-time marriages will eventually end up in divorce.
Yeah.
So we're much better off as far as that's concerned. But personally, I really think it would be better for current housewives to figure out ways to increase their household income, maybe by starting a small side business of their own to bring in profits for themselves and for their families. Now, if these housewives are actually able to do that, then they can contribute to EPF in their own capacity so that they actually increase the total amount of money that comes from 2 breadwinners for that family. Now, only in cases where there's no practical way for the housewife to earn money, only then do I think her husband's EPF money should be diverted. You know, there's a lot of talk about the husband's money going to 2 percentage points as well. You see, if you do such a channeling, then all it does is basically shift 2 percentage points from the husband's EPF into hers. But there's no additional money flowing into that household set of EPF accounts.
Okay.
So I guess for marriages that are on the rocks, whether people actually articulate that or not, I think it's better for some money to flow to the wife's EPF account to give her some kind of semblance of stability.
Now, talking more about EPF, it actually allows a lot of forms of withdrawals, and one of them is allowing EPF members to actually withdraw from their account 1 to invest in unit trusts. So what are your thoughts on this?
I think anyone who wants to consider doing that should really look at the concept of the triple R, which in this context refers to the risk-reward relationship. Now, the EPF Members Investment Scheme was launched in 1996, and quite frankly, a very large part of my financial planning practice involves helping clients withdraw a portion of what they have in EPF Account 1 to invest in long-term unit trust portfolios.
Okay.
Personally, I believe it's a very good program because it allows EPF investors who have excess funds in account 1. A lot of people don't actually understand this, so let me just give you a sense of numbers. A long time ago, in 1996, then maybe for pretty much a decade, nothing changed. And all you needed to do was to maintain a 50,000 ringgit minimum in account 1. And then EPF streamlined its approach, which in terms of global financial planning practices is very, very wise. And so what EPF did was, it basically said the younger you are, the more time you have to invest, and therefore the amount of money that you need to keep in EPF safe is less. And so based on the current table that we're working with, for a 30-year-old, this individual will only need to keep 29,000 ringgit in account 1. But by the time he or she reaches 40, the minimum sum that must stay in account 1 is 78,000. And then by the time you reach 50, that excess has to be, the minimum has to be 165,000 ringgit.
I see.
And so the older you get, the more that you actually have to keep. So for those who earn a lot of money and then the money flows in, they, in general, I think it's fair to say that they are deemed to be more sophisticated and they can probably make intelligent decisions as to whether or not to keep their money in EPF, keep it super safe, or whether they want to use a portion and add on a little bit of investment risk in the hope, but not the guarantee. This is really important. The hope, but not the guarantee of trying to get better return. The truth of the matter is, though, if your portfolio is well structured, then the longer your investment time horizon grows, let's say, personally, I tell people, don't do this with your EPF money unless you have at least 7 years. Ideally, it's nice to work with people who have a 20, 30-year horizon.
Okay. Well, that's one of the options for people who want to withdraw their EPF. We also want to talk about people who are looking at withdrawing their EPF to pay off their down payment or also to pay off loans. And we'll be talking about that after this when we come back on Ringgit Sense. We're going to be taking a short break. When we come back, more on maximizing your EPF and also planning for your retirement. Back with us on Ringgit Sense, we are still talking about maximizing your EPF savings. You're still with me, Azara Tagaya, and we are still in the studio with our guest today, Rajan Devadasan, to tell us more about how we can maximize our EPF savings and also planning for retirement. Now, more on the EPF savings. A lot of EPF members are actually considering withdrawing their savings to actually pay for their down payment or for home loans. So what do you have to say for people who are actually looking at this option?
I think for most people, it's actually very useful that EPF grants us flexibility, particularly with regard to the utilization of the money in account 2. As most of us know, when our money flows into EPF, it's split into 2 accounts. 70%, the bulk of it, is effectively our retirement account. And 30% can go toward retirement, but if there is let's say, a very serious medical condition, you can pull out money for that. You can also pull out money for education purposes, usually for kids' tertiary education. But the housing one, I think, is actually very, very interesting. In my opinion, when it comes to whether or not people should withdraw EPF account 2 money as to help with the down payment on their home or to pay off their home loan, I think if they know what they're doing, I think it's a very, very good idea. Let me give you a very personal example.
Okay.
My wife and I got married in October 1998, so we're coming close to our 20th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Still got to get there.
Okay.
But okay. And we also bought our home, the one that we still live in, around that time, and the deal was effectively closed in August 1998. And so my wife used her EPF account 2 money, I used my EPF account 2 money. And at that time, you could only withdraw from EPF account 2 for the subsequent reduction once every 5 years. Then it became once every 3 years, and now you can do it once every year. So in general, I think it's a very, very good plan. My wife and I actually were able to pay off our original 15-year mortgage in 5 years. Now remember, at our time, you could only get money out from EPF again after 5 years. And so what I did was, because I could crunch the numbers, as interest rates started to come down, initially we kept our payments the same. we stood resolute and we didn't accept the bank's proposals to reduce our payments. On top of that, I also went to the bank, and as my business began to grow, I gradually tried to increase the payments.
Yeah.
So because I was tracking all the numbers, at the point at which, at month 60, 5 years after the mortgage, when EPF released money again, I was able to clear off the whole mortgage. So 5 years to clear a 15-year loan, helped primarily by EPF. So in my case, it worked out very, very well.
Yes, in your case.
But the thing you have to be very careful about is this. For as long as EPF's returns are significantly higher than what it costs to take out a bank loan, then you probably want to weigh the pros and cons. And very often when it comes to new housing loans, there's a lock-in period where you get really preferential low rates. So even though I think it's wise to use account 2 money for your down payment so that you reduce the amount of money that you borrow, for subsequent withdrawals, I would suggest people just wait a while, even though you can take money out every year. Maybe just take a beat, slow down, and watch the interest rates that you're being charged. And if you begin to feel that, okay, the differential between what EPF actually pays and the bank is charging is fairly close, then I think it actually makes sense, because using EPF money when it comes out is a lump sum that can actually be used to hit the principal and bring it down significantly. There's nothing quite as liberating as at least owning the roof over your head, 100%, not having even one iota of it tied to the bank.
Okay, but
it's very freeing.
I see. Okay, so according to EPF, 50% of retired members actually spend their EPF savings within 5 years after withdrawal. So the question is, once someone retires, what should they actually do with their EPF savings, and how can they make sure that it lasts throughout their retirement?
Ultimately, the question that you're really going to have to ask is, to put it incredibly crudely, bila mamati. That is the question.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got to be very careful how you couch that. Because of longevity risk, we are on average likely to live 20 to 30 years in retirement. And that means we need to account for long-term inflation plus rising medical costs as we age.
Yeah.
Therefore, for those who do not know how to invest, I actually recommend they keep all their money in EPF and only draw out a steady monthly income. For those who have some level of investment knowledge, I would recommend they consider leaving half their money in EPF. And then, you know, because you're allowed to take money out at 50, you're allowed to take money out at 55, you're allowed to take money out at 60.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that they, in principle, consider leaving half their money in EPF, invest the other half in a diversified portfolio of funds, straddling 3, 4, or 5 different asset classes. I think it makes sense to invest in assets that will actually grow. And that means riskier assets. So within the World Wealth Report, the 5 asset classes that they use in their analysis are cash, cash in the bank, cash in money market funds, fixed income, meaning buying bonds. Bonds are IOU instruments, or bond funds. And then those would be what I think of as low-risk investments, effectively savings. And then you have the high-risk side of stuff, which would be equities, which are which grant you fractional ownership in businesses, which give the best long-term returns, but can be incredibly volatile in the short and mid-term. And then you've got investment real estate. And then you've got a catch-all category known as alternative investments. On a global basis, they talk about hedge funds, which are not readily available in Malaysia, structured products, foreign currencies. But within the alternative space, my favorite would actually be commodities, because commodities represent the stuff of life, whether it be oil or wheat or cotton or whatever else. So coming back to this, for someone with a high-level investment knowledge, I recommend they consider leaving maybe a quarter of their money in EPF, and with that quarter, just draw out a very gradual sum coming through. And then they invest the remaining 75% in a diversified portfolio of funds. And if they have the skill set and the inclination to do some kind of straightforward analysis, they might want to also go directly into high dividend-paying blue-chip stocks. If you are willing to commit to reading, to thinking, to attending seminars, and as your knowledge begins to grow, then the options that you have will also grow, and the opportunity that you have to try and generate better than inflation returns, I think will actually go up.
I see. Okay, wonderful advice there. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for the interview with you. Thank you for sharing with us on Ringgit Sense.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And that was our interview with Rajan Devadasan, a licensed financial planner, talking to us about maximizing your EPF savings and also planning for your retirement. Hopefully you picked up a thing or two from our discussion today. We're going to go for another short break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking to you about saving money through urban farming. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Ringgit Sense. You're still with me, Azaria Tagaya. Reducing the cost of living has been something that we've often talked about in the past. Now, here's something you might have heard before regarding saving money, and that is that you should grow your own vegetables. Well, this may be a viable option for those of you living on landed property where you can grow your own greens in your own garden. But what about those who stay in a condominium or even a small apartment? Is it possible to grow vegetables in the little space you have on your balcony? And what if you don't have a balcony? Well, we may have the answers for you. In our next story, we find out how aquaponics is turning novices into green thumbs. This is Anissa Norden's garden on her balcony. She's one of the many Malaysians who are growing her own food in small spaces. If you had asked her 2 years ago if she would have a thriving vegetable garden, she would have probably laughed it off.
Well, I always want to grow my own veggies, but I don't have green fingers. So I tried, I think for 2 years, tried to plant my own in my own soil and all, but nothing grew. So then that's how I said, okay, stop it, not going to do that. Then I tried hydroponics.
Hydroponics is basically the process of growing plants without soil. Nutrients are delivered to the root of the plants with liquids. Roslan Ghazali is a hydroponic specialist, and his company, Toklan, sells hydroponic sets to amateur gardeners living in the Klang Valley and other large cities.
Based on our profiling, basically our customer mainly from the big cities. They are living in a condominium or high-rise building, condominium apartment, even in flat also. So basically 80% of customers actually they are so-called high-end customer. They can afford to buy vegetables, but I think maybe because of the food security, food safety, they love to plant their own vegetables. So this is it's become a new thing for the people in the urban area.
Toklan sells hydroponic sets ranging from 569 ringgit with 40 pods to 99 ringgit with only 4 pods, suitable for school projects. According to Roslan, a medium-sized one with 20 pods will grow enough vegetables to feed a family of 4. Today, Roslan is delivering another hydroponic set to Anissa to help expand her garden. Each set comes complete with the seeds of your choice and the fertilizers. The setup takes about 15 minutes to build, and Roslan walks all his customers through the process of planting the seeds and basic care. It will also require power so that it can pump the liquid nutrients through the roots.
I like to plant, but I don't like worms. You know, yeah, so that's another reason that I think I want to do hydroponics. A lot of people might also say that compared to soil is much more cheaper, right? But you don't have that assurance or guarantee that would actually grow. Because I've done it the hard way, I've done it a million times. It doesn't grow. If it doesn't have the right fertilizer, if it doesn't have the right amount of water, it won't grow. And furthermore, my schedule is really tight because I have a digital agency. I tend to forget to pour water. So at least this one I only need to look at it every time I come back, or 3 days, once in 3 days. So then there would still be sufficient water and fertilizer.
Anissa harvests her garden every other day, and since she started gardening, she stopped buying vegetables at the market.
I really care about what I eat, so I actually buy organic vegetable. Like for a pack of bayam, it could cost like 5 to 10 ringgit. It depends, and that's only for one sitting. So I think in a week, my organic veggies, it's already around 100 ringgit because I really eat a lot of vegetable. So and then not just that, because one time you go to the supermarket and then you buy a lot because you don't want to go again, right? So by the time, sometimes you tend to forget that's in your fridge, then you throw it away. So I don't experience that anymore with my leafy vegetable, because then I only grow bayam, kangkong and all, so we only will pluck when we want to eat.
Once you get started, the recurring cost would be the seeds, nutrients, and other materials. Okay, so basically these are the items that you will need or you will get with your first cycle of growing your new green hobby, and these are the additional items that you can get because we have organic insect repellent if you choose to get that. But once the first cycle is over, which takes about a month or so, that's when you start investing in your hobby. And it's a really kind of an affordable hobby because you will need to buy a new round of seeds and growing medium. Seeds will cost about 4 ringgit and 50, and it will actually last you about 2 to 3 years. So that's a very affordable and good investment in my view. And then aside from that, you'll just need to buy your hydroponic fertilizer and also the growing medium, which costs about 20 ringgit, and the growing medium costs about 5 ringgit per pack. So actually you spend around 20 to 30 ringgit per cycle depending on how fast you grow your vegetables. Now, a small balcony garden like this can actually help you grow enough vegetables for a family of about 4 people. And it can actually save you a lot in your monthly grocery budget, especially if your family eats a lot of these vegetables. And the thing is, you don't necessarily need to have a balcony. Even if you don't have a space like this, all you need is 3 to 4 hours of sunlight a day. So if you have a little space by the window where you can get sunlight, then you can grow your vegetables there as well. If you want to live healthy while saving money, give gardening a try. You might just like it. Well, that's it for today's show. Today is actually our last episode of Ringgit Sense for this season, and we'll be taking some time off to plan for next season. In the meantime, if you want to watch our previous interviews and learn more about personal finance, go to our Facebook page, Ringgit Sense TV3. Until we come back on air, I'm Azara Tagaya signing off. Invest and save wisely.